All right. Welcome, everybody. Today, we're going to be talking about success mindset. And if you don't know the Stetzels, we start on time and we end on time. So it is 3:30 Central Time on the dot. And I know we've got some folks coming in that would like to listen to this presentation. But what we have planned for you today is to talk about a concept called victor victim and really helping you realize where you're at in your mindset and how that can affect not only your personal life, but your business life as well. For those of you who don't know us, my name is Trisha Stetzel, co-owner of Results Extreme Business Solutions, Navy veteran, part of the business pillar of the Chamber of Commerce, volunteer fire department. Oh no, that's the other Stetzel. Anyway, I'd like to introduce the other half of Team Stetzel, Dennis.
Thank you, Trisha, for the warm introduction. Yes, I'm the other half of Results Extreme Business Solutions, also Navy veteran and recent joiner of the Sergeant Volunteer Fire Department. If you do notice, I have a little hairline crack here. My first week as a volunteer fireman, we had actually 2 calls, one of which was a life flight. And just long story short, I bumped my head getting into my gear. So rookie mistake. So today, though, outside of extracurricular activities, wanted to talk a little bit about this concept called victor victim. And no good talk from my side would be complete without some sort of PowerPoint or visual. So I'm going to share my screen because that's what I do. And I'm going to talk you through and use this visual to kind of guide the discussion. But this victor victim concept. So we refer to it, there's a line between being a victor and being a victim. And being below the line, like this is what you look like when you're below the line. And it's said that you have the bends, right? You're kind of hunched over, just not doing quite well. You're essentially negative. And the bends, it's an acronym, and it starts with blame. People who are below the line or have the bends, they start with blame. And we know people that we work with. We know people that we do business with. We know people that we interact with, where it's always about blame. It's about, it's someone else's issue. It's someone else's problem. Someone else was the cause, or someone else created a situation that was something less than positive. The E is excuses, right? There's always an excuse. And I say, there are reasons cleverly disguised as excuses. And excuses, there are genuine reasons, but reasons without a solution tend to be excuses. And so the E in bends stands for excuses. And you've heard, blame and excuses. There's always a negative connotation. There's nothing positive about what this person has to say or what the situation is. It's always about negativity, always looking at the negative aspect of a particular situation, a particular relationship, or anything that happens in business and in life. The D is for denial, right? Denial is just that, denying that it's happening, denying that it's my fault, denying that there's a way to get there from here, and really not looking at the facts as they present themselves. I mean, a lot of times moving forward is understanding where you are and living in the true state of either your business, yourself, your relationship, and being in denial and constantly denying that there is a situation to address is a below the line activity. And then scarcity. It's never, ever, ever enough. There's never enough to go around. We like to say that we live in a world of abundance. This is the exact opposite, where there's not enough customers to go around. There are not enough leads to go around. There are not enough supplies to go around. There are not enough employees to go around. And so, as opposed to going and looking for solutions to the problem, when we have the bends and we're below the line, we're living in denial. We're living in denial that there is another avenue. We're living in denial that there is another way to get things done. We're we're negative, our heads are hunched over, our posture is hunched over, we have excuses, we have plenty of people to blame. And a lot of times, the reason that all of those things come to fruition and they come permeating through our pores is the fact that we live in a world full of scarcity. There's just not enough.
And when was the last time like you went to a networking event and someone in your same industry was there, right? You might be open to having a conversation with that person to see how you can help each other, but they may not. They may see you as full on competition, right? Has that ever happened to you before, Dennis? Ever?
Happens a lot. It happens a lot. But the reality is that, for every industry, right, someone is successful. In fact, there are many, many people who are successful. And I'd argue that industries exist because there is a world of abundance, right? There wouldn't be an industry created around entertainment if there was not an entertainment industry that was paying a whole lot of money with a whole lot of clients, with a lot of different venues and a lot of different activities that could keep people in an entertainment industry, right? The coaching industry, the consulting industry, the IT industry, the waste management industry. I mean, you name it. If you're in an industry, whether it be insurance or real estate, it's an industry for a reason. And it's not because there's a scarcity of clients or resources, right? You just need to go find them, right? You need to figure out what your niche is. And if you see people in your own industry or other, if your first inclination is to see them as competition, well, then you're living in that world of scarcity. I would argue that there are more clients and more opportunities than there are people to serve them across all industries. We just need to figure out how to attract those people. And how do we do that, Trisha?
How do we attract the people that we want to work with?
We start, so these are people below the line and they are the victims. What we want to do and how we attract those people is change our mindset from victim and living below the line and pivot to living above the line, right? Moving out of that world of scarcity and moving above the line. And these are the people who are the victors, right? We're standing tall, we're standing up straight, we've got our arms raised, and we will absolutely live above the line and be victorious. Now, when we have somebody or we have a group of people, individuals or organizations who are living above the line, we say that they have nothing to prove, right? They're on their way up. And PROVE is also an acronym that starts with being proactive, right? We're not waiting for things to happen. We're not waiting for that next opportunity to fall into our laps. We're not hoping that someone will visit the website and click on a button and buy something from us or engage us in a consultation, right? They're proactive and out there and visible and moving. Use this webinar as an example, right? Being proactive. Don't have to do this, but we're out there sharing this to a general audience, adding value, because this is a proactive way to add value to the community, to our clients, to people who are not clients, because there is essentially nothing to prove here. Responsible, right? Taking responsibility for your situation, taking responsibility for your business, taking responsibility for everything that happens around you. In Japan, Trisha and I both lived in Japan. And for those who have ever driven in Japan, there's no such thing as a 100% fault car accident. Why? Well, because the belief is, and I share the belief, by getting in the car and driving on the street, you have partial responsibility for anything that happens to you, right? By the nature of being a leader, putting yourself in a leadership position, by nature of being a manager, by the nature of opening a business or being an entrepreneur, you have taken responsibility for entering into that road. And it is your responsibility to ensure that you're out there being proactive and that it is no one else's fault. It is no one else's responsibility to make sure that you're successful. It rests right here, right within the four walls of your organization. Ownership. They maintain, people who live above the line and are the victors, they maintain ownership of everything that happens. It's theirs. I worked with a great CEO down in Mexico. He was a CEO of Cemex, and he believed that all problems can be solved within the four walls of his organization. Whenever anybody came forward and said, well, we have a dependency on an external vendor, or this didn't happen because the customer failed to fulfill their obligations and they didn't give us what we needed, he would continue to press. And so how could you have fixed it? How could you have owned it? Who else could you have reached out to? And he would argue that any shortcoming within an organization could be solved by the organization taking ownership, or the manager or the employee taking ownership of the situation and going and figuring out how to overcome that. Visionary. You got to start with the end in mind. Where do you want to be? Living above the line and being victorious and running a business, being an entrepreneur, being a leader, being a manager, you have to have some kind of vision, right? It's not transactional. There are many transactional things, but those transactions lead to something that is visionary. So a vision for the future, something that you can see, something you can share with people. If it's simply to fulfill orders, well, it's going to stay hard. It's going to be hard to maintain a positive attitude and be proactive on something that is very transactional. Phone rings, why are you answering the phone? What are you trying to accomplish? How many calls do you want to answer, or how many calls do you need to answer in order to get that high paying client? How many calls do you need to answer until you get that larger order? How do you envision that becoming easier and more productive and more fun, right? So they're visionary. And everything that they approach from a perspective of excellence. Everything we do will be accomplished and will be executed to the degree of excellence that we've defined, or that I've defined as my standard. And those are your victors. Those are the people who are sitting up straight, standing up tall. And it doesn't mean that they're successful 100% of the time. They're learning lessons along with everyone else, just like all of us. But they approach it from an above the line perspective.
But I think even I'm sorry. I think even the language that you use, right? So for example, below the line, I might say failure is the limit of my abilities. And I just give up when I'm frustrated, right? But if I have a success mindset or a growth mindset, or I'm living above the line, I would say failure is an opportunity for growth. Challenges help me to grow. Right. So a lot of the times I feel like it's the language that we use with ourselves and the thoughts that we have.
No, great point. Absolutely great point. And it is all about the perspective. What you just did is you took the same situation, and instead of looking at it from a blame, excuse, a negative component, denying that it exists, scarcity, you just turn that same exact situation and turn it into something that you're gonna approach positively. And for that reason, right, your victors are the opportunity seekers. They're the ones that look for opportunity in every situation, whether it's perceived to be positive or negative. It's a temporary setback or a major hurdle that's overcome. It represents an opportunity. And below the line, these individuals are failure magnets. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If we have a scarcity of resources, if we're approaching things from a negative perspective, if we have every reason or every excuse cleverly disguised as a reason to justify why we did not achieve a particular goal, it's going to happen. That failure is going to manifest itself, right? And so, Tricia, you brought up a great point. Maybe I'd like to unpack that as we finish off this visual. Is the language that we use, and how do you pull yourself out by using language? I'd like to talk a little bit more about how we bring ourselves above the line by using language. And with that, I'll stop sharing, pull it back to just us girls talking.
Us girls. Hey, there's a guy or two on the line.
Okay.
Maybe you.
Well, it's just us girls. Just us
Just
girls.
us girls. Yeah. CJ popped in after we got started too. So
CJ,
there's
cool.
CJ.
All right.
Yeah, and you know, while you were going through that, I started to think about this this one particular visual that I had and I've used in the past with language about having a success mindset and kind of going from I won't, I can't, I don't know, I wish I could, I want to, I think I might, I think I can. And then you finally get to I can, I am, and I did. And it really is about that language that we use, right? If I'm saying I can't, I won't, I don't know, I wish I could, I'm kind of the guy that's humped over or slumped over, right? Versus the person standing up tall saying, I can, I am, and I did.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's powerful. Just and having those, and that could be something, those words, it's just could be as simple as something as putting that on a post-it note and keeping that at your desk, or keeping that within a visual, so that, you know, when you get stuck or when you can't figure out why you're feeling the way you're feeling, take a look at those as a visual cue. Yeah,
So,
oh, go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
So I do fall below the line on rare occasion. But how I pull myself out and how I pull teams or people that I'm working with out is just consciously saying, okay, time to come above the line. So when you recognize that you've got the bends, you recognize, and it happens, right? We have bad days. We all have bad days. We all experience failure. We're human. You know, emotions are very strong. And oftentimes they're really, really hard to overcome, especially if you don't consciously make the effort to overcome them. But one of the techniques that I use and that I promote is just saying those words, right? Okay, let's get back above the line. And what it does, it's like a mental reset for me, for the teams that I'm working with, for anyone that's in the room, for people around me. Okay, time to get above the line. And if there is something negative to share, why not just say, all right, I'm going to go below the line for a second and vent, but I'm going to come right back above the line. You get it off your chest, you share it, but then you consciously come right back above the line, right? And looking for that opportunity, looking for the opportunity that particular potentially negative situation represents. And as you shared earlier, it's the same situation. There's nothing, it's the same setback. It's the same drawback. It's the same, you know, whatever scenario you want to portray, but it's that same one, but it's how you're looking at it. And it's how you're viewing that particular setback or that particular situation or that vendor, that person, that client. It's all in the way you look at it. And you'll find that, you know, the endorphins that are released once you say, okay, time to get back above the line, your brain starts to open up new channels. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to be proactive. I'm going to find the opportunity.
Yeah, I can, I am, I did, right? So as we round out the discussion today, and you did start to bring in the business, right? And because it's the space that we operate in most of the time, not just ourselves, right? We can control ourselves more easily than we can the folks around us. But how does this victor-victim concept apply to business?
In the same way that we just talked about, except sharing it, right? And you have to share it. So if you're in a business with a team, make sure and share. I mean, you walk the talk. If you're the one, and this stuff is infectious, right? If you're the one who walks around and are the leader that is proactive and responsible and demonstrates ownership and is the visionary and approaches everything with excellence and shares those words, right? And talks about living above the line and being above the line. And it is that pillar of positive energy, then it's infectious in business, especially in teams, right? Also, if you're a solopreneur, right? Who are those vendors who are the partners, who are the referral partners or the strategic partners, the alliances that you have? You know, if you're approaching it with a positive attitude, that you're proactive, responsible, you maintain ownership, you have a vision for your company, and you demonstrate excellence, you're constantly living above the line, it's going to attract those same kind of people. And what you'll see, especially in business and especially as a solopreneur, that those who want to drag you down probably are going to exit and find someone else to commiserate with, right? And you'll recognize them much more quickly. So I would say in business, don't let yourself be pulled down. Don't let yourself be pulled into, below the line. And if you do, remind the people, okay, it's time to make progress. Let's pull it back above the line. How are we going to fix this? I mean, how many times have you sat with somebody in a business meeting or even at a casual coffee, and all you talk about are all the really ugly things, the negative things, the challenges, the behaviors, all the things that you don't really like. It's not necessarily a gossip session, but it's just it's almost like a negative therapy session. How much more powerful would that 30 minutes be if what you did is look for solutions?
See, I know you're asking that question to the audience, not me, because I don't partake in that. There's no way. Well, and I'm thinking about, even the opposite is true. The one optimistic, highly disciplined, determined, positive, open-minded, resilient person is infectious, but that negative person who's on the team is as well, right? That one negative Nelly that's on the team can pull everyone else down. So have you been in a situation like that, Dennis, with a team where there was one person that was just dragging everybody down? And how do you deal with that?
So I think how you recognize it first is that you see conflict in the workplace. Right? You'll see the conflict. And there's a great course that I took recently, and a great quote by Sharon Baez, the CEO of Innovative Alternatives. She shared, there is no such thing as conflict without emotion. Right? If you think about it, conflict does not exist without emotion. And so what a lot of times in the workplace, what you do is when you address conflict, you deal with the right and the wrong. You deal with this behavior was negative and therefore there's a consequence, and let's deal with that. And we feel as though we've administered the conflict. But what we haven't really done is we haven't addressed the emotion. What's the emotion underneath that conflict? Because sometimes those negative things and that conflict shows up as a missed deliverable. But how do we go and fix that between the individuals that need to work together? And a lot of times, and it's uncomfortable for a lot of us, especially me as a very high C, right? Dealing with the emotional aspects of people working together. But if you think about this is all about this is all about the emotional aspect of dealing with people and working with people. Living above the line has nothing to do with ones and zeros. It has nothing to do with being right or wrong. It has everything to do with the emotions and the energy that you bring to the workplace. So you have to be willing to and have the courage to address, first acknowledge that there is conflict, and then try to understand and realize and recognize what are the emotions that need to be resolved in order to bring everyone above the line. Because you're absolutely right. You start to see that conflict or that emotion that drags the whole organization down. It goes from individual conflicts to a really negative behavior, which is avoidance. And people start to avoid it and they start to work around it. And so that one person who we're avoiding, we're not depending on them to do their job, we're doing their job for them. And then that person gets used to it. And then the avoidance grows and grows and grows. And before you know it, you have part of the organization that's overcompensating for one particular individual that people are avoiding or not wanting to work with. And oftentimes just by speaking to that individual and addressing that emotion and addressing the conflict, we'll take huge steps and start to resolve it. So I would say address it, talk about it, don't avoid it.
So as we wrap up, just to add on to that, because I see some of our audience, we've got solopreneurs, we've got people with small teams and medium-sized teams, but we've also got some nonprofit folks on with us today, Dennis. So when we're talking about volunteers, would you give them the same advice to those people who don't actually work for them for pay, right? These are volunteers that are in the space. And how do you deal with that below the line, above the line?
I would say, so for the nonprofits and the volunteer work, it's all about the vision, right? So being able to clearly articulate where you're headed and why you're headed there and what that impact to the community is going to be. People who are going to rally around a volunteer opportunity are not in it for the pay. They're not in it for the job. They're not in it for the time card. They're in it for the vision that's created. And so the owner of that nonprofit, or the leader of that nonprofit, or the person that's representing that nonprofit, has to be able to articulate very clearly what that vision is and why we're here. And so people who aren't aligned with that vision, they're going to self-select and leave, right? But I think of all the things, living above the line for those nonprofits, it's all about that vision. It's all about that vision and being able to articulate that in a way that everybody can understand and in a way that rallies people around the cause.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I appreciate you running us through that. So the concept, you guys, was victor victim, really talking about a success mindset, the way that we talk to ourselves, the people that we surround ourselves with, all of that stuff matters, and it's huge, right? Who are you hanging around with? What is the language that you use outwardly, and what is the language that you use internally as well? I think that we all need to go back and revisit this, and I think you and I and the people that we surround ourselves with, we know, right, above the line, below the line. And I would encourage everyone who's been on the call with us today to take that back to your organization, take it back to your family even, and your significant others, and tell them what we talked about today, right? And if you do find yourself below the line, help each other and lift each other up back above the line. So Dennis, before I give our next date for the Team Stetzel quarterly webinar and a little call to action, do you have any closing words?
I just consciously run yourself through the concept. And if you do nothing else, ask yourself regularly, am I above the line or am I below the line? And that will make great strides in keeping you above it. Just consciously ask that question on a regular basis.
Yeah, I love that. All right, you guys, thanks for hanging with us again today. As I stated at the beginning, if you don't know us, we are start on time, end on time kind of people. Our next quarterly webinar is going to be August 16th. It'll be on a Tuesday, same time, same bat channel. And our call to action is in the chat window. I know some of you are familiar with the growth scorecard. Some of you are not. If you haven't yet taken it, it's a great tool. Please take advantage of it. It's free. And if you'd like to do a follow-up chat about it, we'd love to do that with you guys. So thanks, everyone. It was great to see you here. And thanks for joining us. And we'll see you in August. Have a great day.